Sydney has a reputation for being showy, a bit flashy compared to the other capital cities. Its inhabitants, known as Sydneysiders, rejoice in their emerald city surrounded by sparkling beaches, a harbour hailed as one of the world's best, and a reputation for partying hard, late and often. They also have a knack of ignoring reality.
There's no denying Sydneysiders enjoy a bit of fun. Even as a young penal colony, we managed to kick up our heels dancing our way into history. One of the very first orders given by Governor Phillip in 1788 was for the building of Government House. Completed in 1 year under the supervision of convict builder James Bloodsworth, the two-storey residence was situated in Bridge Street, where the Museum of Sydney now stands. It helped that the makings of the building, including the timber, glass windows, flagpole and 5,000 bricks, had been included in the First Fleet's cargo. It wasn't long before the officers and ladies of the colony started to receive invitations to attend balls. The annual Queen's Birthday Ball was a highlight of the calendar. The regimental band played for Highland reels and quadrilles, which kept the couple spinning. Sydney became Australia's first official city in August 1842, with its own mayor, Charles Windeyer, Esquire. The city had less than 5,000 houses and an estimated population of around 30,000 citizens. In November 1842, His Worship hosted the city's first civic dinner at the upstairs rooms of the Royal Hotel on George Street, the first building in Australia to reach 5 stories in height. 2 years later, in August 1844, the new Lord Mayor hosted an extraordinary social event, the first Sydney Town Hall Ball. It was fancy dress and staged at the Victoria Theatre on Pitt Street. And didn't Sydney colonials go to town? We are fortunate to have a complete list of what costumes were worn, which included Napoleon, Robin Hood, Tom Tug the Waterman, several Maid Marians, Jack the Giant, who was described as being 9 feet tall, Black-Eyed Sue, gypsies, Moors, Spanish sailors, and a politically incorrect group having a "what were we thinking" moment who came as La Perouse Aborigines, one of whom, according to the Sydney Morning Herald, did a ridiculous facsimile of a native dance. The discovery of gold in the west of New South Wales in 1851 was more an occasion for panic than celebration. Gold fever rapidly transformed Sydney as ship after ship deposited would-be fossickers at Circular Quay. Most had no experience in gold digging, hardly any money, and no idea where the goldfields were situated. The reality that the New South Wales Western goldfields were some 180 kilometres away across the Blue Mountains must have come as a shock to many. Some, prickling with disappointment, never made it past Parramatta. British politician, the Honourable Mr. Finch Hatton, writing in his 1856 travel book, Advance Australia, certainly didn't consider Sydneysiders flash. They never know what to do with their money. They seem incapable of having a really good time. Society there is split up into cliques, and each detests and despises the other. The climate is a depressing one, and listlessness is the prevailing feeling of the citizens. There is always a sickly and enervating sensation in the air. The hotels are universally dirty and uncomfortable. The waiters are flippant and insolent. The steam tram cars in the streets are an odious nuisance and kill 2 passengers in a week, on an average, beside maiming many others. The low orders of the people drink heavily. The Governor of New South Wales, when he gives a ball, regales his guests with nothing more potent than raspberry syrup and lemon syrup. The leading journal in Sydney represents its readers with news that is a week old and with hypothetical accounts of what would have happened if something else had taken place that never occurred. And the city itself is described generally as a steady-going, sleepy old town, thickly covered with blue mould. In 1888, Australia celebrated its centenary of foundation. Like its successor, Australia Day, little thought was given to Indigenous people on whose land the city had been built. There was a strong sense of colonial born was superior to sterling born. We were starting to think of ourselves as Australian rather than British. The Lord Mayor hosted a grand centenary banquet at the newly built Sydney Town Hall, followed by fireworks over the harbour. The Federation of Australia in 1901 was another occasion for great celebration. The colonies finally came together with pomp and circumstance. Parades, tableaux, concerts, grand balls and endless speeches marked Australia's unity. We were still to agree on where the nation's capital would be built. The first part of the new century was absorbed by the Great War. Clouds of darkness shadowed much of the world until Armistice Day, when we celebrated the end of the war to end all wars. Sydney, along with most of the world, kicked its heels up in celebration and relief. In the roaring 1920s, with memories of war in the past, Sydney became a wild party town where flappers danced the latest craze, alcohol flowed, and even cocaine and cannabis, although restricted, were freely available. Ambassadors and Romanos were Sydney's chic nightlife destinations. Both were in the CBD and were the place to be seen dining, dancing and generally having fun. Signor Azzalan Romano was Sydney's host with the most. His self-named club on York Street opened in 1927 and was an instant success.
In this strange illusion, chaos and confusion, people seem to lose their way.
Romano's orchestra band, under the direction of Merv Lyons, broadcast live on ABC radio every week. Romano's was famous for its dining. A 1928 menu by chef Pierre Henry offered oyster cocktail with tomato sauce, stuffed savoury tomato and a mixed grill of 3/4 of a pound of sirloin, 4 small sausages, 4 slices of bacon, 2 kidneys, mushrooms and potato au gratin. If that didn't get you on the dance floor, nothing would. If any one venue was seen as decadent Sydney in the 1930s, it would have been the notorious King's Cross Bridge Club, better known as the 50-50 Club, or Kit Kat Club. In 1934, the Sydney Sun reported, under the headline, "Thrill Seekers Dance Until Dawn." The 50-50 Club on William Street, where the dawn dancers of Sydney, the midnight butterflies who flutter and whirl through the night to the reckless rhythm of jazz, was raided by the Vice Squad at 2 a.m. and 127 patrons whisked away to the Darlinghurst Police lockup on charges for alleged offences against the liquor laws. Many of the girls sobbed bitterly on their way to be charged, but the majority took their arrest in the light of a humorous interlude, and wagon after wagon rolled away to the strains of the Prisoner's Song.
With the cold prison bars all around me.
Girls who did not have the £2 necessary for bail were compelled to spend the night in the police station. Fictitious names were generally the order of the day when the arrested men and women were being charged. One man said his name was Sydney Arbor. There were quite a few Smith, Brown and Joneses. From 1938 onwards, serious dancers headed to the Trocadero on George Street, where bands led by Frank Coughlin and Abe Romaine had Sydney twirling. The purpose-built dance hall accommodated 2,000 patrons and ran for over 30 years. The stylish Barbara James was one of the star vocalists. After a night of dancing, revellers usually walked up William Street to King's Cross, where Sydney was always awake. Sydney during the Second World War was chock full of British and American servicemen looking for R&R, rest and recuperation. Post-war rationing, restrictive liquor licensing and the sobering memory of war dampened a lot of the city's party spirit. Most Aussie men thought the Yanks were here to steal our women. A popular rhyme ran, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, went for a ride in a Yankee car. What she did, I ain't admittin', but what she's knittin' ain't for Britain." Supper clubs offering dinner, dancing and a show, like Glen Eagles, the Roosevelt, the Mountbatten, the Celebrity and Prince's, tried their best to cope with the restrictive licensing laws, but raid after raid by the Vice Squad and licensing police eventually wore them down, and one after another the bands packed up and the club doors tightly closed. There was a glimmer of hope in the 1950s when the city erupted with joy when the 6 o'clock swill ended in 1955. Introduced in 1916 as a war effort, hotels closed at 6 o'clock to get Daddy home. By 1955, the 6 o'clock swill had been retained beyond its use-by date. Yes, we certainly celebrated when that one entered. By the 1960s and 70s, the entertainment landscape of Sydney had changed dramatically because of the Vietnam War and the move to popular music. Bands playing Aussie rock became a dominant form of entertainment across the city. They were loud and bold, with much younger audiences than ever before. Mums and dads stayed at home as television took over their lives. We were no longer flash. We were more practical than theatrical. The city dozed off again in February 2014 when the Sydney lockout laws were introduced by the government with the objective of reducing alcohol-fuelled violence. The legislation required 1:30 a.m. lockouts and 3 a.m. last drinks at bars, pubs and clubs in the Sydney CBD, King's Cross and other entertainment precincts. Many Sydneysiders felt as if they were being punished for having too much fun. The lockout laws were partially lifted in 2020 and destined to completely disappear post-COVID. Will we ever have such fun times again? Sure we will. Sydneysiders know there's always a party just around the corner.